Stellar Fundraising Auctions presents Black Tie and Tails, brought to you by Sojourn Ventures and Greater Giving, and featuring your hosts, fundraising auctioneers Greg Quiroga and Devon Bell. Welcome to Black Tie and Tails, where we take you behind the scenes of the wonderful world of fundraising auctions to tell tales of triumph and tragedy. I'm your host, Greg Quiroga, and I'm joined by my co-host, Devon Bell.
Hello, all.
One of us is recovering from a cold. That would be me. And so there's nothing worse for an auctioneer than the fear of losing one's voice.
Yeah, the voice, right? It's like, do anything, but don't take the moneymaker.
It's funny to think of that as the instrument that we utilize and rely on and lean into the most. But I stopped going to sporting events and yelling. I'll go to a sporting event and clap, but I know I used to yell loud enough for the athletes to hear me.
Yeah.
and
I'm sure you've done this. I know I've done this. Is that
I can't wait.
I'll do a back-to-back, and I'm gauging
2 events in a row.
Right, do a back-to-back 2 nights in a row, and after the first night, I'm gauging how lost my voice is because I've only got like 20 hours to get it back on course.
Right. Yeah. Throat coat tea and good night's sleep. There you go. So I'm recovering. So bear with the strained auctioneer's voice. But this episode we're going to talk auction takeover, where one person manages to take over and make your fundraising event all about them. And we deal with some strange people and some strange personalities. We deal with our share of personalities, don't we, Devo?
Yeah, of course, we are ourselves personalities, but we mix with a lot of other ones as well, that's for sure.
And when it's in the service of fundraising, like, bring the personality on, right? Like, if you're going to leverage your celebrity or your personality to help us raise more money for the cause, then I'm all in. Like, take the stage. I will always give vintners or donors of auction lots, where it's relevant, donors of auction lots, the opportunity to come on stage and make the giving about them, in the sense that people support people and people are always looking to purchase relationships. So to chef event, bring the chef on stage. But occasionally we run into somebody who decides that the entire event is meant to be about them.
They're often a person who's important to the event. Maybe it's a big donor. Maybe it's a celebrity. You say it real glibly, like, oh, I'll always let someone come on up and talk about it. But we both know that's dangerous territory.
Oh.
What I often tell clients is, hey, if you're given a lot of money, then if you want anonymity, you get it. And if you want lots of credit, you get that too. And if you want to take the mic, well, let's talk about that then.
Yeah, and I say it glibly. Every client, we sit down, we have a meeting a week before the event to talk about all of the auction lot donors and how best to acknowledge and honor their donation from the stage. And I say, look, it goes from just calling out their name, right, to indicating that they're in the room, to having them wave, to having them stand up at their table and wave, to having them come stand on stage and wave, to having them come stand on stage and grab the microphone and talk. And that last part, like you say, that's where it starts to get really dangerous. And I'm going to launch into the first story I've got, because it is the prime example of this. I was working with an organization that was a science-based organization, and they had this board member who wanted to give a keynote speech at their gala. And I thought, okay, and this board member was going to talk about the new product that they were producing. It was software based, and they were doing something revolutionary, and they wanted to come in and talk about this new product. I said, how is this relevant to your cause? And they're like, well, he's on the board. That's how it's relevant. He's on the board. So we're like, okay. And so, and he comes in, and we get to the night of, and they're like, yeah, he's going to do his thing for 20 minutes.
Oh.
And it's right during prime time. Right? Like we get in, we give everybody their 15 to 20 minutes, their chitty chatty time, as you call it. We go, it's time to start the program. And he gets on stage and he starts doing this video and slideshow presentation demonstration of this software that he's developing.
Okay, Steve Jobs.
And it's going, and I mean, at least Steve Jobs would have brought his checkbook, right? I mean, this guy is going and it's going. And I went into another, they said he'll talk for a little bit, it'll be fine. He goes for 20 minutes. And I had to leave the room and go into a different place where I could focus on my script and just try to bring it back to focus. And then I should back up and say, he's on the board and he's donating an auction lot. I'm like, okay, great. We've got this guy who's donating an auction lot. So at the very least, like, we'll be able to leverage his celebrity for that. But 20 minutes of unrelated keynote speech, product development,
right,
product pitch, and he was very proud of
I was just going to say, it's stuff he's really into.
Really
into talking about this stuff.
So thrilled. So, I mean, and when you've got 20 minutes, you can really go into a lot of detail about what it is you're developing. I mean, we got granular. And so we get to the place where we're starting the auction and finally, like 20 something minutes later, and we get going with the auction, and one of the auction lots is to go to his studio and get a behind-the-scenes tour. His software was, somewhat kid-facing. And so somebody's going to buy it for their kids and go into the studio. And so we're like, woo.
It's like gamey kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Educational.
Without getting sued. Yeah.
Some, software programs for kids.
Exactly. Something like that. And so we get some bidding going, and it's one of the hotter lots of the night. And I'm like, sweet, good. This, it is paying off, right? And this woman buys it, and the crowd goes crazy. Everybody's like, yay! It's the end. And so, like, okay, well, at least the trade-off was somewhat worth it in the sense that he took a bunch of time, but he had an auction lot that was one of the hottest lots of the night. Sweet. Have our wrap meeting. Everything's great. Everything's happy. Coming back, following up the next year, start trying to plan as we do months in advance. Let's talk about the auction lots. Well, can you go back to him and get the tour of the studio? Can we rely on that again? Oh, no, that's not going to come in this year. Oh, well, why not? Well, so it's hard to tell the story with a straight face. So what happened is the woman who bought it took her kids to the studio and totally enjoyed her time there with him, and he enjoyed his time her.
Oh no!
And so
mutual enjoyment, huh?
He divorced his wife.
Oh.
She divorced her husband.
Oh.
The two of them got married, and it blew up the board. Oh. It changed the nature of this organization and its event. Like all the personal tragedy aside of kids losing their parents and all of a sudden going, I mean, all of that aside, like the effect it had on this organization was detrimental in the long term. It didn't just ruin one auction, it ruined multiple auctions because the following year, everybody had divided into camps, right? And the people...
Real Housewives of San Francisco.
Real Housewives of fundraising auctions. Everybody was mad, and we didn't have his donation back, and she wasn't there to make a donation, and it was. I haven't seen an individual take over an auction to that extent before, and really not since. I mean, I've seen people take over auction since, and we'll get to the horror story of the week later in today's episode, but I haven't seen anybody take over an auction in such a self-serving sort of way and then ruin an organization in such a self-serving sort of way.
Right.
I mean, this was one of the first stories when I would tell this story to people, they would be like, oh my gosh, you have to write a book. And I always would respond with, I don't want to get sued.
Yeah. Names changed to protect the innocent and the guilty.
And the guilty. Black Tie and Tails is brought to you by our partner, Greater Giving. For over 20 years, Greater Giving, a global payments company, has helped nonprofits and schools across the nation exceed goals in person or online with their all-in-one secure fundraising solutions. They help simplify event management, quickly train volunteers, streamline check-in and check-out, and raise more funds. Discover Greater Giving's fundraising solutions and free educational resources at www.greatergiving.com. That's www.greatergiving.com. Now, Devon, not every takeover happens in the moment the night of. Some takeovers start in advance.
Right. The takeover can start as early as the consulting process, which is, of course, an important part of the auction. I was doing an event, this was a couple of years ago, for an organization, he said, trying to be generic. And they, it was like public servants, and they had an organization, and it was a big event. I mean, not massive, but not tiny. It was like 550 people.
So just, that's big. That's
it's pretty
just,
big. Yeah.
That's just beyond the realm of like, it's not personal at that point.
That's right. 550 people is where the farthest people away are pretty far away.
Yeah.
Like you better have the movers and the shakers in the front 10 tables, that kind of thing. So they were partying hard and they wanted to party, and you could tell that was happening during the reception. So they got them in running late. And they had a big program, someone introducing the person who introduces the person, giving some awards, having remarks from lots of people who were involved. And there was a point where a guy got up who gave, I guess, what kind of amounted to a keynote speech. He was kind of one of the main speakers, and he was very engaging, and a lot of people in the audience knew him, and he was funny, and he spoke for 18 minutes. So not quite your 20, but 18 minutes.
It's a long time.
And so he talks, and about 2/3 of the way through his talk, he's just getting laughter and talking from the heart. And I had that moment where I should be up there.
Right.
Why aren't I up there right now? Put me up there.
Your fundraiser spider sense is going off. You're like, I want to be raising this money right now.
I should be asking for the money as soon as he gets his next laugh. I get up there and I look on the program, and there's like multiple pages of stuff past him. So we go, and it goes. So that's at about 45 minutes, which is a pretty sweet spot, right? At 45 minutes is when he's doing his thing. I need to be up there. And of course, during consulting, I argued hard for this. And the head of the organization, so obviously he's very important, said, no, we need to have the auction at the end. And I said, okay, that's a big, robust program, that is going to be the end of the meal. So not only was it a big, robust program, not only do we have the auction at the end, but they were way behind.
The timeline slipped? Oh, get out.
I know it's hard to believe, but running late. Okay, next thing. Running later, let's do the next thing. Oh, we're running really late. I could see the AV people were tearing their hair. And
in a room of 550 people, it's hard to keep those back tables engaged. Like you said, you need the movers and the shakers up front. And the longer the program goes where you are not engaging them, and it's not a direct connection, like they don't know the people who are on stage.
That's right.
Because friends of friends of friends, there's a lot of leeway in that. But like 45 minutes and 550 people, and now you're way behind. This is just getting better and better.
It's like a 550 people petri dish, and the not paying attention disease is spreading throughout the space, right? And I can see it happening. So they go on and on forever. It keeps going. At the end, they do a big ending ceremony thing with like bagpipes and like a big huge
event's over.
Yeah, it's a big huge to do. It's a grand finale
before the auction.
Oh yeah, we haven't got to the auction yet. They do the big grand finale. They're marching through with the bagpipes. You can't hear a damn thing. I check my watch. They came into the dining room 2 hours and 45 minutes ago.
Oh no.
So the bagpipes finish up, and they're like, okay, get up there. All right, get up there and sell your little heart out. So I got up there, and to be fair, their auction lots, they only had a couple, and they were nicely connected to their mission and to their culture, and so they did okay. But as far as leaving money in the room, I saw many people didn't have their paddles because, they got up and walked over to their friend's table, and now they're drinking drinks with their friends. So it was a takeover before the event ever started, and I had the yucky, I have a bad feeling about this feeling throughout. And what do you know? It was well served.
And those kind of takeovers, those personality clashes early on, they're hard. They're hard, especially when it's the head of the organization who's stepping in. Because what do? Like, okay, this is like all you can. I tell people in consulting all the time, my consulting is advice based on experience, having done lots of these events. But at the end of the day, I'm an employee. You hire me. If you want to do it your way, I will do them your way as best as I possibly can. And
right.
But it's just so challenging to hear that buzz in the room and know that buzz is potential that is just dissipating before your very eyes.
Oh yeah, sweet spot. Oh, goodbye, sweet spot. Goodbye. I'll see you in an hour and a half when I take the stage. Yeah. It was an adventure. And then ironically afterwards, they said, "Oh, that was really tough. I could tell that was tough. Great job by you." It didn't have to be tough.
Right.
It didn't have to be tough.
These were speed bumps we could have avoided.
Yes.
I know a smoother road. Instead, you're watching the car pull off into the distance and you're stuck on the side of some dark desert highway.
Nice. I see what you did there.
Cool breeze in your hair.
Yeah, right. Warm smell of the donors.
We're going to end it right there. Because up ahead in the distance, there's just bad jokes.
Up ahead in the distance, approaching train.
Yes. Usually in a situation like that, if there's a light at the end of the tunnel, it's an oncoming train.
Train whistle imminent.
Why don't you hit it?
Okay. Black Tie and Tails is brought to you by our partners Sojourn Ventures. When you need to add a little travel spice to your lineup of auction items, check out Sojourn Ventures. Sojourn curates trips to Italy, Bali, and now Spain at reasonable consignment prices. They offer over a dozen curated packages that include round-trip airport transfers, full-body massages, yes please, daily breakfast, in-home chef's dinners, and more. Your buyers will enjoy top-level concierge service and 2 full years to redeem their trip, all at reasonable consignment prices. Check out www.sojournventurestravel.com.
How many W's?
Check out www.sojournventurestravel.com or look for the link in the bio of this podcast.
It's difficult when you know that somebody's taking over and you can't do anything about it, right? The head of the organization and the keynote speaker. I had a situation where somebody took over in the heat of the moment and nobody knew what to do. It still stands out as one of the most flabbergasting auctions I've ever done. And that says a lot, right?
Yeah, I guess done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
And so I'm doing an event in Los Angeles, and it's at a major donor's house, and we're in their backyard on the tennis court. It's a big, beautiful setup in LA. And there happens to be one of his neighbors is a famous celebrity who's been in lots of movies back in the day, and his wife. And this celebrity's wife is talking to the donor at the beginning of the night, and they're on friendly terms. They're talking about having dinner and coming over for dinner at the donor's house and that kind of stuff. And so I think, like, okay, she has cachet with the donor and therefore with the organization. And so we get going on the auction, and she's bidding on the first auction item, and it's going really well. And it's a 3,000, a 32, 35, 38, 4,000. She's in at 42, and some guy at the front table and does this and some guy at the front table just says, "I'll do 10."
Oh, yeah.
And we're like...
Gangster move.
Total. And he had this deep New York accent, which I won't even attempt to do. Deep New York accent. He's like, "I'll do 10. And I'm like, awesome. Does anybody want to go 11, right? And nobody. So boom, done, sold, $10,000. And he says he's doing it in honor of his buddy. Great. It was one of the honorees, in for 10. And then he says, you know what? I'm going to donate it back in honor of my buddy. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. So I go to her. You were in at 42, if you want it. And she's, and wind up selling it to her again for 4,200 as well. Get going on another auction lot, and she's bidding again. And I think, okay, well, this is fun. She's playing around. She winds up winning it, and she yells in this really thick Russian accent, I bought this, and no man has the balls to bid against me.
Okay. Okay.
And we're like, okay, right? It's suddenly like her, like
you.
it just took a strange turn, but she's bidding on a bunch of stuff, and but I'm still a little confused as to all of the relationships at play, and not sure how to handle like she said that right to the guy who had bought the first lot, like, no man has the balls to bid against me. And I was like, that's a pretty heavy-handed gauntlet to throw down.
Right.
So we get to go through a few more auction lots, and she's talking all sorts of trash throughout the auction, and I'm not used to having somebody.
Is there auction lubricant?
Oh, there is.
I smell auction lubricant. There
is
this
a
party.
lot of auction lubricant. I should have backed up and said and it appears that her portion of the auction is getting more lubricated as the auction goes on, because it's getting.
We want inhibitions lowered within reason.
Right. Yeah, like I make the joke that alcohol is the lubricant of my career, but I also still want everybody to be able to drive home safe and make decisions they don't regret the next morning, and that's not where this story's going, because during the Fund a Need, while I'm making the pitch for this organization, she comes up and says, I want to say something. And she's standing down at the foot of the stage. And I'm like, I wish we could, but I don't have a microphone for you. And she says, that's not the problem. And she turns around and starts yelling at the crowd, right? Yelling. And I'm like, oh, they can't hear you down there, right? I'm trying to put barriers in front of her that she will find insurmountable. And she does not find barriers insurmountable, because she's like, especially this stage. She's like, and so she turns around. She's wearing a knee-length cocktail dress, sparkly type that doesn't have a lot of flexibility to it. She flops over, like face first, onto the stage that's coated in black AstroTurf. She grabs like a piece of stage with each fist and just hoists herself onto the stage, just like kicking her little feet as she gets up there. She turns around and like straightens up, and then dusts off real ladylike, brushes all the AstroTurf off of her knees. And she turns around and she starts yelling at the crowd, right? And what she's yelling is, how much she appreciates this country and this organization, and how she wants people to give. But I'm like, nobody can hear you because you don't have a microphone. And she goes, okay. And she goes over to the podium, and I'm looking at the sound guy, and I'm giving him the, don't do it.
Cut her mic.
And he's just like, huh? And he just like turns it up. And so she starts talking. So now and everybody's like,
no man has the balls to shush me.
Exactly. No man. And so up until that point, like it had been the first few tables had heard her and had known what was going on. Now the entire crowd is in on her crazy, right? Like we are all, and this, one of the challenges is, at what point are you the good guy or the bad guy when you pull somebody off the stage?
Yep.
And it's a real serious, difficult question to ask, because as soon as I piss off a bidder, I have alienated support for the organization. And as soon as somebody is so mad at me that they no longer want to bid, that's the worst part of my job. So at what point are you supposed to play the heavy?
If they're doing 11 minutes of wandering stream of consciousness, that is hurting your event. Right. Which is that you got two evils to deal with here.
Right. And I don't know, like, she and her husband are very tight with the guy whose house this is, and he's a big name in the philanthropic circles in which we're playing right now, right, for this event. And so I don't want to, I'm not sure how, like, at what point do I just like push her off the microphone or say, thank you so much, I appreciate, and then I look and I see the guys who are running the event, and guy run events, no offense, are the worst because guys plan for all the things that aren't going to happen and fail to see the things that are, or have a plan in place. So we didn't have a stage manager. We didn't have somebody who could come and say, oh, this is really sweet, we need to get you off the stage.
Someone with the Bo Peep hook.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're looking at me going, you get her off this, and I'm looking at them going, you get her off this. Everybody's going back and forth. We're like, nobody wants to be the jerk in this situation and so finally I look at the AV guy and I'm like, you gotta cut this now. And I lean and I'm looking, and as soon as she takes a breath and there's a place, and I'm like, go, turn it off. And I'm like, that is so lovely. Thank you so much. That's such a great example of why we're here. And, that's why we're here. Now let's try to raise some money, and go
let's
back
give
to
her a big hand.
Yeah,
big hand. Thank you for your remarks.
And she's
over.
like, as guys are pulling her off the stage, she's like, no, I have more. And I'm like, oh, I bet you do. I bet you do. And later on, the guy whose house it was is pitching his auction lot, because there was an auction lot to have dinner with him, and she jumps up and says that she and her husband will make an appearance and come, and she goes, and she puts her arm around him, and he slaps her arm off and is like, don't you touch me. And I was like, oh, I wish I'd known.
Right. I would have Bo Peep hooked you long ago.
I wish I'd known. I would have pulled the strings on this parachute a long time ago.
Self-destruct button.
And I know that you've had your own instance of, because it's bad when you're planning. So it's bad enough when you can see the train coming, but I also know that you've had your own instance of somebody derailing your fundraising and taking over your auction in the middle of it in the not most pleasant way possible.
Yeah, I say it all the time in the consulting. Let's center this around the fund of need. Mm-hmm. From a feeling perspective, from a party perspective, and from an X's and O's fundraising perspective, the fund of need is the centerpiece. The strongest thing we got, we hit them with it right at the fund of need. We're going to get people in their fills, and then we're going to go for the irrational philanthropy, right? And we've both seen when it's done right, it can be just right. You just hit the fever pitch. I've had before where they said their bit and I could see people were tearing up, and I didn't come up and add anything. I said, I have nothing to add. Who's in? Right.
And after the emotional appeal, we should just say, and when it comes to emotions and the fund of need, my perspective is that we form long-term memories when there's an emotion attached to a moment. Yeah. And if we can make the fund of need memorable, we're doing great.
Yeah. And I don't want people analyzing and thinking about them. I want them in their feels. I want them caught up in the moment. So this is an organization, an arts organization, but the event is partnered with a very wine-centric organization. And so there's a lot of lots. There's dozens.
Wine auctions tend to be long.
That's right. And we love wine.
Oh, yeah.
We love wine. Wine is a place where the price list comes up a lot. Wine is a place where people spend money for cachet. Wine is a great place to raise money. So,
wine is also where there's a lot of relationships to be sold.
Absolutely. That's right. So I love the wine part of it. And, the enophile aspect, us here in Northern California, we come across that all the time. And it's great. Bring it on. So this winemaker, this one famous winemaker, which is a fabulous winemaker, and I love their wines. They're sponsoring the event, though. So the wines on the table are this wine, and they have a special representative there from the winery, and they have their fingers in a lot of the event.
Love it.
Right. So halfway through are dozens and dozens of lots, just hours up on stage selling wine. The founder and still head of the event gets up to talk about it. And we don't script her remarks because she's feeling it from her heart. She doesn't need a script. She can talk about this all day long. This is her passion, It's her joy, and talks about the wonderful things they do in the community and the wonderful things they do with the arts. And it's just spot on. It's just pitch perfect. And
pitch lobbed.
Yeah. So I'm getting ready. Oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to ask for the money. And I guess we didn't... I encouraged her to speak from the heart and not be too scripted, but maybe we should have been a little more scripted, because she's giving her remarks and kind of looks around like she's getting done to someone to hand the mic to. And I'm stepping up. Here I go, turning off my mute. We're going to ask for the money. And she says, "Hey, wine person," the representative from the winery, "you want to get up and say something?" And she goes, "Yes, I do." And she takes the mic, right, as if in slow-mo. And I'm going, "No," right?
And in that moment, I would be hoping like, oh, she's connected to the cause. She's going to say something that makes this better. Right. She's going to like continue,
Right. So she gets up and takes the mic and starts talking about the wine that's on the table. And you know what? I don't fault her in the least. That's her job. She got sent there to do that. She's there to represent the wine. And so that's what she's doing. Hey, here's our new wines coming out. Hey, you could come tour the winery. Hey, check out these wines. I'm glad to talk to anyone afterwards. And she does maybe eight minutes of this. And I'm watching the conversation come up and the clinking get louder. And I'm going, oh, it was so right. It was like that moment when I was going to grab it. And then we talked about wine for 8 minutes. Again, I don't blame the founder of the organization.
Right.
I should have given better instruction of here's what we're going to do right then. And I don't blame the wine person because they're representing what they're supposed to do. But they took over right at the moment when I was supposed to do my thing. So next time, maybe we'll script that one a little more.
Well, and that brings us to a good place to talk about takeaways. Because I think that a lot of these situations could be addressed with some planning, right? You have a point person, have a plan. If there's going to be a keynote speech, ask to see it, right? Ask to see the keynote speech. If you're working with somebody to make sure that there's a run of show that is agreed to and adhered to. Because on that last example of yours, it would have been really simple just for the founder to know, as soon as I'm done, I hand it back to Devon. As soon as I'm done, I hand it back to, like, the importance of that, right? Not trying
drill it into him.
Right. Because there's I don't know what they felt was to be gained by offering the mic to a random other person, right? Like, she was just feeling the love so much. Is anybody else feeling the love? And the wine person's like, yeah, I'm feeling
the love. I love my winery.
Yeah, totally.
Let's talk about that for a while. And I don't even necessarily need to see the remarks, because I have found when someone speaks not polished, from the heart, even haltingly, even awkwardly sometimes, that's real and that's human. And that is, when you
that'll get a crowd's attention better than the most, like, I work with news people all the time.
I was going to say exactly that. When you have a newscaster as your MC, they're so polished that it sounds like drunk.
But as soon as the person gets up there and goes, "Oh, I'm kind of nervous and I've never been in front of a crowd this big," and everybody's like, "Oh,
yay,
yeah," and
right.
anytime I'm watching somebody who's going to speak for the Fund the Need, or speak at some point during the course of the evening, and they look nervous, or they look like, especially youth. If we have youth who are participating in an organization, I will always take them aside and say, "Hey, a couple of points. Like, I'm not to be the middle-aged white guy offering unsolicited advice, but
here it comes.
But here it comes." But what I will tell them is, look, for starters, like, if you mess up off of your script, right? If you're reading a script and you mess up, only right? You don't have to say, "Oh, I meant to say this," because then, and secondly, the crowd is going to love you.
Yeah.
You do not have to, like, they are going to will your success. So you can't screw up. You've screwed up if you do, and just embrace the moment with the crowd. And crowds go in for those, like you said, the unscripted or the unrehearsed or the unprofessional speakers.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I kind of want that. That you don't have to give me a script, but might I tell you that 3 minutes is better than 6, and 6 minutes is better than 9.
And I think part of that also is designate a bad guy. Somebody who isn't an auctioneer, who doesn't have any relationship with the crowd, who isn't going to impact the fundraising, to come and intervene if you need intervention. I did an event once where we had a teenage kid who was speaking from the heart and was doing great, and realized 3 minutes in, oh my gosh, the crowd is just loving this. They are listening only to me, and kept going. And it was like, and at that point, it's the same thing. Everybody, the crowd was like, oh, they loved this kid. And at a certain point, I'm like, we got to do some fundraising here. So have somebody else be the bad guy. Because as we know, as we've said, crowd has a limited attention span. From the moment they sit down for dinner to the moment they're done mentally is about 90 minutes.
Yeah, and we're always playing this funny game where we go up there with a lot of authority, but as you like to say all the time, we have no power. We have no power for them to pay attention. We have no power for them to raise their paddle.
Don't tell them this.
When you are selling the second and you go back to the person and you go, okay, you were in at 4,200. We'll give it to you for 42. And then they were just happy to be let off the hook because they were caught up in the moment, and they wave you off. That's one of the times where I'll do a little lean on, like, wait, you were in at 42 10 seconds ago, right? Like, that's when I'll lean on them just a little, or just try to get them to say yes in the slightest thing and go, okay. And then no backsies.
No bid backsies. No bid backsies.
No bid backsies.
You can find all of this information in an accompanying blog post on our website. That's stellarsf.com. And of course, you can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast distribution channels, which they must have because they're here now. But we appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening to Black Tie and Tails. Be sure to tune in next time for competition. What happens when your fundraising event is on the same night as, the World Series?